All right, can people see my screen?
Do you want to turn your camera on? No.
Nope, I'm good. The room is a mess, so awesome. So really excited to join today and talk to you a little bit about open source AI. Why I think open source AI is the future of AI and how you can get involved. So let's start with a little bit of a question. What do all of these things have in common on the slide here? And I want to see answers in the chat. Okay, and you've been working in machine learning for a while or AI for a while, you will know that these are all key libraries and packages that we use daily as ML practitioners, and they're all open source projects, right? Recently, there's even more indication of commercial success. For example, the acquisition of Databricks and Mosaic, and also recently the funding round, with Hugging Face. Really excited for that team. Congratulations. So clearly, open source AI is working, right? So a little bit of introduction about myself. Who am I and why do I care so much about open source AI? My name is Maddie Shang. I'm a research engineer and team lead. I've been kind of doing ML R&D in industry for about 6 years now, but I am most proud of my work and contributions, and I'm most passionate about what I do in open source AI. I actually started my career as a open source contributor after pivoting from venture capital and finance, teaching myself how to code. It's how I got my first position as a software engineer, and subsequently I was able to use open source to explore the fields of blockchain and eventually really dialing in, focusing on AI. Right. Since then, I was able to build a number of useful things. I was able to contribute to ML research and pushing that ahead, and I was also able to create access to opportunities. So I am also built by open source. So I want to take a moment and share some of the cool projects I've had the honor and opportunity to, get involved in. One of them is Women Who Code Data Science. This started in 2019 after I landed, one of my first, real ML engineering jobs. And the intention was that in the process of becoming an ML engineer, there were a lot of people giving feedback, such as, hey, you need to go get a PhD, or this is going to be really difficult for you, or don't think it's going to work out. And the moment I realized, oh, I actually figured this out, I really wanted to essentially provide a pathway to make other people who are trying to do the same thing have an easier time. So this is a community that I grew from just myself to over 2,000, within a year. And it's continued to grow since then. We are offering a lot of open source material on the basic statistics, how to write your first line of code in Python, all the way to advanced natural language processing. So really cool project, and you should consider joining. Here's another really cool project that I had a lot of involvement with. So this is a project called SIFT. This was actually the first cross-platform for federated learning that runs in the browser, on iOS devices, and also on Android devices, and of course on the server. So as part of this project, I was able to contribute to research, and we presented at ICLR 2021. And after that, I started to lead a team within OpenMind called OpenMind Rexis, stands for Recommender Systems. And as part of that team, we built a differentially private browser and a prototype. So what it does is that it's able to look at the data that's stored on your local device to optimize user experience and also personalize it, right? Without that data ever leaving your device, and hence preserving your privacy. So here's a very quick demo of animation or GIF. It's hopefully starting it sometime soon. Oh, sorry. And it's basically showing you the browser doing some differentially private federated learning computation in the backend and kind of adapting the UI according to your preferences. And the next project is the learning team beta bootcamp as part of OpenMind. This is spun up to essentially give people access to knowledge and skills and kind of foundations of building privacy by default products and privacy preserving machine learning. And this has since then spun into OpenMind courses. There's a lot of really good material here produced by industry experts. So if you're curious about machine learning, privacy, how it affects you, feel free to take a look. And lastly, a more recent example of how open source AI education is able to kind of help people create opportunities and improve their careers. this is I was kind of asked to lead a machine learning certification program offered by Google that leads to a professional ML engineer certification for NYC. And as part of that process, we were able to work with over 100 people, studying for their certifications, right? And I wish all of them very much good luck and fun in the process. So all that is to say, I spent a lot of time working in open source AI, thinking about it. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I have a lot of data and a lot of experience that I could potentially share with you. And it is my conclusion that AI is uniquely suited for open source for the following reasons. One is that training AI has a lot of potential and a lot of benefits, but it also has a lot of cost. And some of those costs are what we call externalities. These are unaccounted for, right? Therefore, AI is best treated as a public good. Also, open source AI is able to improve alignment, access. It is fluid. It's efficient in resources. Projects and experiments are spun up and shut down all the time. And therefore, it really improves transparency, trust, and reduction of risks, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. And finally, even if you didn't really care about the first two and you're just purely here for effect, open source AI actually gets you really far. It is one of the lowest cost, most effective ways, even for real enterprise use cases, and we'll walk through one of those. So some of you who know me knows that I spend a lot of time in the wilderness and living off the land. And recently, there's a lot of wildfires and kind of extreme weather events due to climate change. So I got thinking, how much is the impact of training a large language model? And the results really was very sobering, right? And the other thing I know is that there's a lot of communities, especially the indigenous communities, doing climate science, climate data science, doing experimentations on prescribed burning to prevent wildfires. They're very successful, and they've been doing that for thousands of years. Now, if the data science and machine learning community does not have equal and fair representation, how do we get to learn from their experience, their wisdom, and how they do data science, right? So this is kind of my quick illustration of why the first 2 points kind of matters. And then let's look at an actual example of us doing machine learning in enterprise settings using open source data and open source models. So here's kind of the problem setup. We have a bunch of tabular data, and we're trying to help users who are maybe domain experts but not technical experts answer questions and generate visualizations using their data set, right? So for example, a question might be, what is the best-selling product with low risks? And after the query hits the table, it's supposed to generate visualization that answers that question. The problem is we didn't have very advanced models at the time, and also we didn't have any proprietary data to train the model. So the only option we had to pursue this project is to start with open source. And that's exactly what we did. So here is what I call the large language model R&D ladder, right? We start de-risking by using the simplest things, and then we gradually increase the complexity and going all the way from few-shot learning to end-to-end fine-tuning, right? But the first thing we did is actually ask a API and say, hey, can you tell me a business story? And the intention of doing that is we wanted to see, do pre-trained language models at the time have enough business context? It was able to produce a few articles that at the first pass could have been, something that showed up on Bloomberg News. So we're pretty okay with that result. So then we went to do what we now call prompt engineering and context engineering. So we asked questions like, can you give me a list of business KPIs and metrics, such as return on investment, net asset, net profitability ratio, and things like that. And it was actually able to do that as well. So basically, this tells us that pre-trained language models actually have enough information to handle our specific business domain. So then this kind of earned us enough confidence and willingness to get the resources to proceed with what we call few-shot learning, right? So in few-shot learning, the idea is when a user starts to ask a question, starts typing into the search bar, frequently they know how to start a question, but they don't know how to end the question such that it ends up with a successful visualization. So could we actually, get a human expert to give us a handful of examples and then train a model to basically mimic the generation of, a complete natural language query that would end up with a successful visualization? And then this is exactly what we did. So we were able to use a T5 model that's open source. We're able to train this using free compute using Google Colab. And also, we got basically, this is the only data set that we have that we provided to the model. And the results actually came out pretty good, right? It's able to essentially generate similar kind of ways of ending inquiry. It did, kind of mess up a couple times. It said, average profits on average, which doesn't make any sense, but the rest looked good. So after a little more kind of fine tuning of this model, we're like, okay, let's move on to the next step and do a little bit of end-to-end training, right? So then the idea became, if we're able to generate valid proposals and the user keeps typing, but maybe the user is typing in a way that isn't typically very, machine learning friendly or business context friendly, how do we solve that problem? Could we, look at what the user is typing and then look at the list of proposals that was generated by the first model, and then basically return a rank and find the most similar one that will lead to a successful visualization and helping the user accomplish their tasks. And then so what we ended up doing is training a model to basically predict contextual similarity. And I want to share with you some of the results. So here we took the model DistillBERT. We actually started with BERT, but it turns out that using DistillBERT speed up the training by twice and also only reduced the accuracy by only 12 points. So that was a very good trade-off. And we started with the accuracy of about 33%, which is consistent with a model randomly guessing if the two sentences you gave it is similar or if it's contradicting or it's kind of neutral, not really sure, right? And in the end, we're actually able to achieve accuracy measured by F1 of 75%. So that's a pretty significant lift. So here are some really interesting examples that I pulled out I wanted to show you. The first sentence is, a friend drove to my house to visit with some candy. And the second sentence is, my home was visited by a friend who came with sweets, right? I'm pretty sure I made up this example because it's, not even grammatically correct. It's very complex. The words are very different. However, the model was, able to identify this actually meant the same thing, right? Even though I was on purpose trying to confuse it. And then giving you an example of contradiction, we're going to skip the neutral case because that's not very interesting. This next two sentences is, version one, two dudes are observing something together. And the next one is the two guys are sitting with their eyes closed. Now, if you look at these two sentences, they have a very similar structure. A lot of the words mean the same thing. However, the actual meaning is, the polar opposite. And the model was also able to successfully identify that, right? So after all of this, the result is that we're able to use open source data using open source models that we kind of took and fine-tuned using free compute resources provided by Google Colab to cobble together a product that is now actually somewhat helpful and usable to users. So what that actually allowed us to do is to do reinforcement learning with human feedback, right? So it's able to basically make suggestions that a user is able to interact with and also click on. And we're able to collect that now proprietary data and use it to fine-tune a model. But notice how this entire process up until the final point was all done using open source resources, right? So even if you're working in enterprise, you have the funding, it's easy for you to, spin up a Vertex AI instance and train a bunch of models. It's so much fun, like not painful at all. You should still think about doing open source first. So if we are able to show you that open source is very powerful, it's very useful, then the question might be, where do you fit in and what is in it for you? And here I wanted to share kind of how I think about the open source world as a symbiotic ecosystem, right? So first, let's answer the question, who's who in the OSS zoo, the open source software zoo? So this is what I call, in my mind, the world graph of open source, right? In the center, you have an open source AI project, and you have different roles such as maintainer, these are the leaders of project, contributors, these are the lifeblood of people working on open source software, and in the end, you have the users, because without users, your projects are kind of not that useful, and also you have funders, people who have access to resources and have a vested interest in de-risking or maybe, experimenting or giving back, right? More tangibly, this is how the different roles function and how they depend on each other in this ecosystem. Contributors are looking for growth, exploration, fun, and fulfillment. In fact, it's common that if you're a senior engineer, this is like one of your ways to have fun and also stay sane in a engineering job if you don't really have autonomy about what you're working on. Then you have leaders and maintainers. These are typically people who are kind of the technical, kind of like leaders of the project. They would love to have strong contributors. They would love to have access to funding and resources. However, a lot of their time is spent on applying for grants, and therefore they're not able to move their projects ahead as much as possible, and they don't have as many contributors, right? And then in the end, you have users. Users benefit and want free, safe, trustworthy software, and they also want to have a voice. One of the benefits of working with open source software is that you get to have a say, whereas if you're working with a large enterprise, maybe that line of feedback and that influence isn't so direct, right? What they don't like is unresponsiveness from projects, not listening to feedback, not utilizing the data that's being provided, and also low quality projects. And finally, we have funders. So these folks actually have a lot of influence. They have resources. They have a lot of to give and to gain from the open source ecosystem, but they sometimes have a difficulty of deciding who they should work with, what kind of project they should support, and how to define return on investment. Right. The kind of things they can benefit from is de-risking. Right. Open source as a environment or playground to experiment with cutting edge experimental technologies. It is a source of free, trustworthy software. And also, this is a little bit underutilized, but very powerful. Open source is a great pipeline for talent, right? What they don't like is, deciding which projects to work with. They typically sometimes have difficulty with that. And also, they don't like to, be subject to low quality code. So then the question becomes, what can we do to make the open source AI ecosystem function better? And I have some ideas to share. One of the key things we can all do is improve the matching of funders, projects, and contributors by looking beyond vanity metrics. What do I mean by vanity metrics? It is kind of a list on the left of what people typically look for to indicate, is this a good project and is it healthy? Should I contribute? Should I join? Should I provide resources? Versus what actually, in my experience, is a higher but a little bit harder to look for signal of quality and key success factors, right? So maybe instead of looking for a beautiful GitHub landing page, look for the quality and freshness of user and contributor documentation, right? Instead of looking for diversity percentage in the leadership team, maybe look for churn of the diversity in the community and also the diversity of contributions, right? So these are just some of the examples and ideas. Finally, open source is very powerful. It is a great mechanism for improving alignment and helping people with skills and merits, but have some kind of traditional barrier to access bubble up in the ecosystem. But it is still quite far from being perfect, right? There's a lot of burnout in the community, and there's still a lot of bias and barriers to entry. For example, recently there was a project I'm working on, and me and this other contributor who's from Nepal was going to meet together for the first time ever and present at a conference. However, because I have a passport that doesn't require a visa and she does, the conference organizers simply were not able to get her visa documentations, to her on time. Therefore, she didn't get to go. So these are missed opportunities and things, small things that we can look at to continue to do better. So I want to kind of lead into a bit of a thought experiment and maybe discuss some open opportunities in open source, right? And open source AI. So for example, how do we use open source AI to improve the future of work and learning? We have this reskilling challenge. A lot of the old skills and jobs will be replaced. And yet there's so much potential opportunity for AI to collaborate with humans to massively improve productivity. What can we do there, right? There were jobs that are being kind of, removed. For example, a fast food chain recently kind of, took away the jobs of the drive-through order takers. But could we not have, offered them a little bit of training so they can become kind of trainers for these AI agents, right? They know domain context. They are, the people who are best at that job previously. Could they not basically take on a new role with a little bit of training to improve AI, right? That's entirely possible. How do we do that? Next question is, what would be a set of KPIs and best practices to track community health and project health, right? And also, if open source is such an effective way for corporations, enterprises to improve employee morale and benefit from new technology and get access to talent, what would be a very good template for an effective in-house open source program, right? And finally, can we use open source AI to change ethics standards in governance and corporate behavior? So with all of these in mind, I wanted to introduce you to a new project that I've been working on, and hopefully you're able to see this demo up here. So this project is called Bountiful Futures, and it is a way for us to expose machine learning model internals using a visual interface. Now, humans are visual animals, and we have a lot of good intuition, like visual intuition, right? So, for example, when given this data set, let's say we're doing some kind of anomaly detection, how many samples do we need? And what should be the confidence band, right? Without even much kind of machine learning experience, this is a way for someone to go and tangibly interact with the model and see how it behaves, right? And then, so if we wanted to use a real world use case, what we could do is, upload your own data set, right? It doesn't need to be something prescribed. This is a way for people to explore their data without, actually having to write code. So, for example, I just uploaded a data set that has to do with Apple stock prices, and we're going to basically select that data set. I want you to observe that the table here has changed in value, giving this model a second here, and also it's able to I need to select the value in question here. And also it's able to essentially perform an update, right, and do a little bit auto ML. Now, if you're a trader and you want to work with generative AI without being an AI expert and you want to be more productive, you can say, hey, I want you to generate a trading signal when the actual data points are out of the expected range, right? For example, the orange band. And therefore, if you're trading and you have a specific strategy, how sensitive should this model be, right? You can adjust the values and also record it down, right? So this is an example of a domain expert without having to know too much about machine learning or even technical details, communicate information, feedback to machine learning people about how the model should behave, right? But you could easily extend this to a example where this is just open to the public and general stakeholders, right? Say you have a censorship algorithm you're about to launch onto a platform, and you want to give community's feedback about how it should behave, how sensitive it should be, or even allow users to set individual limits for how they prefer the algorithm to behave for them, right? So you could say, hey, if the algorithm is too sensitive, then everything gets rejected. Therefore, there's no freedom of speech. Is this really how we make progress as a society? Or you can say, if the algorithm is not sensitive enough and very toxic, hurtful things ends up being seen on the platform, is that really what we want for this community, right? So now all these questions you can answer. You can get feedback from your stakeholders, and this is a way to essentially build trust in your algorithm, and also an opportunity to improve the safety, transparency, and the performance of your AI before you launch it into production, right? Now, the second part of this experiment is also fairly interesting, and we're able to get good results from it, and that is what happens if we provide a machine learning training data set that may contain some bias, or a machine learning training, a prediction model that may contain some biased results, right? Can we ask the general public or stakeholders who are interested, who are maybe not machine learning experts but have a vested interest in that use case, can we ask them to provide feedback and spot where things are maybe going a little bit wrong? Can they bring up questions we should look into, right? And this is exactly what this is meant to do. Here we have a potentially biased data set that has to do with credit applications and credit scoring. And also we're able to see some of the fields that the model has deemed to be potentially sensitive. And people are able to essentially interact with this data set and slice and dice to be able to identify potential bias, right? So here is an example of understanding how does being in certain ethnicity categories and being the gender male affect your credit application, how many times you have to apply, and also your credit scores. So we are actually able to find interesting results after running this as experiment at a Mozilla trustworthy AI hackathon, right? For example, someone was able to say, "Hey, for your anomaly detection algorithm, I think the value of 17 and 1.08 would be the best values for sample size and also your sensitivity." And someone else was able to identify immigrants have a higher average number of applications despite having higher, average credit score. Is this bias or is this supposed to be? Because maybe there's documentation problems. And finally, someone was able to say there is a possible imbalance in the number of males and females across the data set, right? And finally, the last feature I wanted to show you is that we recently brought on a new contributor, and she's not, as deep in the ML journey as people already working on the project. And she was saying, "Hey, Maddie, it's actually really hard for me to, use this product because there were many things that I don't understand." So what we're actually able to do is build a tool to use generative AI to help people learn about AI. For example, you can select a term and make an API call and ask, Google's Palm API to explain to you what exactly is a Gaussian process, right? So this is the explanation, and that's pretty cool. And maybe you're curious about, so how does this apply to anomaly detection? So we're also able to do that, right? Give me a minute here because Palm is a larger model. So that's what I wanted to show for this particular demo. Let's go back to the slides. So I want to take a minute to thank the people who are core contributors on the team. This is Shashi, and I don't know if we can play the video to have Shashi introduce her in her own words.
Hi everyone, I'm Sasi from Nepal. I'm a machine learning engineer and I work in Open Knowledge Foundation on software development and machine learning. In 2021, I got chance to work with Maddie in open source project to develop a data privacy tool, and in last 3 years I have been contributing in that project and in other projects as well. And I also have a family of 2 children, is 16 and 12, and I have a lot of support from my family. Even though like I have support, it's sometimes difficult for me to manage time as I have planned, because I'm playing different roles like at home and at job, and also due to social norms for women. And open source contribution has helped me a lot in my to improve my coding skills, my communication skills, and also helped me to network with like-minded people. And I can also now share my work easily because it's online. And above all, I really feel happy while I'm contributing, because I feel that I'm giving back to something back to the society. And I'd like to encourage females from many other countries to where there's less opportunity, to also come into the tech field and also join open source community and contribute in open source projects. And last week only we onboarded our new team member Daisy, and we are very happy to support anyone who wants to join open source community and needs help. So thank you.
Awesome, and here's our another contributor. So kind of joined the team and had to drop for other obligations, but we really got his back. He's also our resident security expert. And finally, Daisy. Daisy has a really interesting.
Hello, my name is Daisy.
Yeah, let's play that video.
Hello, my name is Daisy Mayorga, and I am the new open source contributor to this machine learning project for Bountiful Futures, and I'm really excited about this. It's a new opportunity for me as I was affected by layoffs and everything that comes with that, so I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to get onto my machine learning journey and see more representation like myself in the space. So really excited about this, and thank you so much for everyone contributing to this project and having me on board.
Yep. And with all that said, thank you for being here with me and being part of this this like open experiment. So we're working together with Bountiful Futures and Need to Be, who's the organizer of Grace Hopper Conference, Mozilla Foundation, and OKFN. But more importantly, what about you, right? The future of AI is open source and bountiful. How will you be a part of it? If you're a company working on machine learning and you want to get feedback from diverse stakeholders, work with us and allow us to help you improve your models. If you're someone with resources and funding, we would love to work with you so we can push open source machine learning ahead. And also, if you're interested in contributing, definitely get in touch. And if you're just starting out AI, come and play around with these models and help us catch bias and help be a part of the creation of a AI future that you would want to be a part of. With all that said, thank you so much. This is the end of the presentation.
Maddie, thank you so much for that presentation. That was a lot of really, really insightful stuff, and I appreciate it a lot. I did have a quick question. We're seeing an increase in the number of open source models that are being made available. Probably the most popular one these days is the one that from Meta, the Llama 2 model. But we're also seeing a lot of the big companies kind of incorporating them and making them available through their cloud resources. Yet a lot of people seem to like the notion of having an open source model that they can run on their own machine, that's on their desktop. What are kind of the trade-offs between those two almost extreme approaches, running the open sources locally versus relying on a big cloud provider to do so?
So that's a really good question, and I think there's pros and cons to both ends, right? If you're not a very ML savvy entrepreneur, for example, it is so advantageous to you that people like Hugging Face and Google Vertex made these models so just point and click, right? It's going to enable so much productivity and innovation at a scale that we've never seen before. So that's awesome. But at the same time, not every individual or researcher, especially if you're coming from an unusual background, have access to those resources. So then the question becomes, what are pros and cons of that? What can companies like Google or Hugging Face do to maybe improve access? But also, maybe it is a feature, not a bug, right? For example, if you don't have access to massive compute resources and you need to do inference, maybe you will come up with some ingenious way of quantizing your models and actually improving performance for everybody else. And if the ML research community is open enough, they can actually take what you are finding and then publish it as research and basically help everybody improve their efficiency, reduce costs, and actually benefit the environment, right? So hopefully there's benefits on both ends, and we just do our best.
Great. Thank you so much.